everyone, and welcome to An Evening with Luna Press. I'm Francesca Barbini, the owner of Luna Press Publishing, and tonight I'm here with Lorraine Wilson from the Luna family. Welcome, Lorraine. Good to have you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tonight we are going to treat you to a beautiful, beautiful introduction, which is for Lorraine's debut novel, This Is Our Undoing. Here, I've got the paperback and I have the hardback. It's fabulous. And since we are here, I will take the opportunity to remind those of you that don't know that the cover art for this beautiful novel has been created by Daniele Serra. Daniele has worked with Luna Press before, but he is an incredibly talented artist and many people will recognize his style. So Daniele very fittingly has created this marvelous forest with the fox. And when you read the book, you'll understand exactly why this is one of the most perfect cover matches ever. So here we go. So I just would like, first of all, for Lorraine to introduce herself, because, you know, that's what we do at the beginning. There we go. Go for it, Lorraine.
So, hi, I'm Lorraine Wilson, and I live in Fife in the East Neuk on the coast. I was a research scientist for many years, a biologist working in various areas around the world, but I now write and talk to my cats. And I generally write speculative fiction that's influenced by folklore and the wilderness. And I am so delighted to have This Is Our Undoing coming out with Luna. It's just a perfect match, I feel.
Honestly, you guys, I received Lorraine manuscript last summer. In fact, it was for the open submission window, and I was in Rome visiting my mom and dad when I read the manuscript, and I literally disappeared for 2 days. I was so completely taken by this world, and you know, in the heat of Rome, because Rome is very hot, especially in the summer. But suddenly I was in this fresh forest, you know, in the coolness of the forest, quite terrified as well, but also attracted. I want to know what happens next. I couldn't put it down. So there were, you know, we knew immediately that certainly for us. And Lorraine and I have been working, you know, together through the month, together with the artist as well, and our editorial team, and it has been an amazing journey, and now this is such an exciting time. So thank you everyone for being with us tonight for this premiere of a sort of book launch, a pre-book launch, I suppose. And so let's start by talking about This Is Our Undoing. So Lorraine, would you like to tell us, first of all, what the book is about, and also what is the idea behind it? How did it came to pass, essentially?
So I think the best way I can sort of describe the book is being a story about trying to hold on to the light within yourself when the world is full of darkness. It's set in a near future Europe that's a few steps further down the road of sort of right-wing politics and climate change from where we are now, and takes place in Rila Mountains in Bulgaria, which are just wonderful boreal forest mountains, really, really stunning setting. And it follows my main character, Lina, who is a scientist working as a researcher on a station there. But she has a dangerous past, and when an old enemy is killed, her family are put in danger. And the story follows her trying to protect her father and young sibling. But it also deals with her wrestling with the question of how much of yourself are you willing to destroy to protect the people you love. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell. Where it came from, well, the setting was kind of easy. I'd spent time in the Rila Mountains in Bulgaria, and we stayed in a wee house in a clearing in the forest. And it struck me as just the perfect Agatha Christie kind of setting, and then there were none. And I had that in my head as this wonderful place where you could have this really atmospheric, sort of slightly claustrophobic story take place, with surrounded by this forest that's full of wolves and imbued with folklore. Just such a fab setting to have. So that was kind of in the back of my head anyway. And then we were at a point in time where I was very aware of the way that society was changing toward the rise of far-right politics and the rise of tribalism within society, and also with climate change progressing in the way it was. And I was feeling extremely powerless. I think partly because my daughter had reached an age where she was asking questions about why is this happening? How is this being allowed to happen? And also as somebody with a scientific background, but no longer able to be doing my part, so to speak, working in conservation, and really struggling with that sense of powerlessness. And there's the question of, does it matter as an individual if you take your little stance against the status quo or whatever? Does it make a difference? And does it matter if it makes a difference to anyone other than you? Or, is it is the main important thing to hold on to yourself, to hold on to what's true within yourself, and then the ripple effect that might have. So the idea of having that kind of challenge facing someone, of trying to hold on to themselves and their own sense of identity when everything is pushing against that. And it just kind of came from there, really. And then the setting sort of seemed to fit with that, this world that's having the Rila Mountains as this amazing, almost pristine wilderness as a sort of symbol of wonder and beauty, but also that kind of unknown that people generally feel when they're in a very wild place, a very potentially dangerous habitat, that sense of being slightly out of your own depth. So the two just seem to go together really well, the storyline and the setting.
It was perfect, absolutely. Those themes you talk about, they come through so strong in the story, and it really makes you question yourself. What would I have done? Thinking about Lina's past, which of course, we're not going to say too much because we don't want to spoil the story. But even the choices she has to make in her current situation, those are also very important. And there is a tight cast of really interesting characters, and they challenge each other, they clash with each other, and they, they're so well written. I felt that they make you mad as well. You would like just to, sometimes you like sit down, listen, so, which is great. I think that's I think in that sense it's a great compliment to you, because you brought incredible characters. I would like to stay with the Rila Mountain for a moment, and because of course the book, it's really rich, not just from the point of view of the storytelling and the speculative side, but also from the point of view of nature. And in fact, as we speak, just this month, Books from Scotland has issued a nature issue, and Lorraine's book features in there. You can actually read a full extract from the book. I'm going to share that on our blog, on the Luna Press blog, so you can find it there as well. It's already there. And so yes, so this natural aspect of the book, because of course you are, a PhD, you're a biologist, you're a researcher. So I am very, very interested in finding out a bit more about how much your life, your background has in fact gone into the book.
Well, I think at a very basic level, having been a field biologist and always been into birds and flowers and butterflies and whatever, you have, when I am in a setting, a place, I'm very aware of the birds and the butterflies, and I want to know what the species are, and I want to recognize the bird song. My husband's better at that than I am. And so there is that sense when I'm writing of always being very aware of what is around my characters. So I think, yeah, at the foundational level, it's simply that awareness of ecology and of the environment that you're writing about. And I know what species are there, and I know what the climate's like, and I know what it will sound like at different times of day, and things like that. From a sort of more sciencey perspective, I've worked in that habitat in Poland and Russia, radio tracking wolves and small carnivores and surveying bats and all that kind of stuff, a lot of stuff like that. So I have that sort of understanding as well of what it feels like to be moving through that habitat as a scientist, as somebody who's seeking to understand and seeking to answer questions about how that habitat works. So not all of the science in the book is stuff that I personally have done. Some of it's slightly speculative in terms of I'm assuming that technology will allow people to do some of those things in the future that they can't do now. But the essence of the questions being asked and the kind of approach to the study is all stuff that I'd have done at one point or another in my life. So
I think that adds a really an incredible realism layer to the book. It makes you feel like you are in a sound environment. It feels real. It feels real. And obviously, yes, there are foxes. Of course, there are foxes, which is fabulous. And but I was actually thinking about when I was reading the manuscript for the first time. There were also words, new words for me that I learned by reading your manuscript, because of course these are words very much pertinent to the world of a field biologist, and it made me wonder. I said, "Oh, I think I recognize this word, but like quadrat, for example, quadrat. How do you pronounce that?
Quadrat, yeah.
Quadrat, yes. Now, it could be just me being Italian and all that, but for me it was lovely. Just those are words I assumed at the time as well, that are used specifically, maybe in other contexts, but specifically they are the words that you would use in your field. So this was also a lovely aspect, learning new things. Okay, so before we go away from the behind the scene of the book, there is one more thing that also I would like to talk about a little bit as well, and is the diversity in your book. There are a lot of very interesting characters, and this idea of diversity is actually put really nicely. So I'm just gonna let you tell us a little bit more about your approach to diversity in This Is Our Undoing.
Well, I think I'm mixed race. I'm a child of immigrants, and I live with disabling illness, and I'm ex-working class. So I've come from a place where I can see the underrepresentation of certain groups in writing, and I wish, I wish that publishing was better than it currently is. Although I think there are moves in the right direction. So I think I've always had the belief that I want to be part of positive change. I want to be, a good sort of bit of diversity in publishing. I think when you're approaching a story, you can't plan out your world and your characters and your story and then shoehorn diversity in. I think that becomes obviously tick boxy, and I think it's obviously superficial as well. So for me, it was always a question of, whenever I start a story, I write before anything else starts to fall into place. I am thinking about the world that my story is going to take place in, and that involves the society and the history of those societies and the mores that those societies have, and what's lived in the open and what's hidden, and what is accepted and what isn't. And I think if you have a very clear sense in your mind before you start writing of what your society looks like, diversity will kind of happen sort of passively, because as you create characters, they will just take shape in more than one form. It will just happen because that's what your world looks like. So it feels natural. And then you have the question of being true to those characters that you're writing, and that's true of anything, not just underrepresented identities, but writing anything that's potentially difficult for readers, or sensitive for readers. You have to do your homework, and as a writer, that's the responsibility you take on, is to do your work and be as true and as positive about anything that you're writing about as you can. So having learned the identities and sort of and developed the identities of various of my characters, I then had to go away and say, okay, I am writing about a character who's not my lived experience, so how do I make them complex and three-dimensional and give them a powerful story arc that isn't about their marginalization, because that's not necessarily something I have the right to talk about, but where their marginalization is a valid part of their identity, but not the focus of their storyline in This Is Our Undoing.
Absolutely.
So, and hopefully that's what I did. And I mean, Jenny, my Lina's little sister is she's just, I love her. But it was very important to me that I made her storyline about her relationship with her sister and her anger and that part of her journey, and not about her marginalized identity, because that's not all I wanted. For that was to, I think it's okay to say, not too spoilery, to say she's a trans Black child. And I wanted the mention of that to simply be about the fact that at that point in time, she needed to be loved unconditionally by her family. And hopefully that's what I've done, is that in terms of her transness, she is met with unconditional love. And that for me was the message that I wanted for that. The rest of the story about being a trans child, particularly a Black trans child, is not the story of that marginalization and that oppression and that erasure from society, is not something that I have the right to go into. So she's there. Her story in This Is Our Undoing is about her relationship with Lina, and about her anger and her the journey that she's been on, both physically and emotionally.
Before you mentioned about about yourself and disability, so I would like to ask you if you could share a little bit with us about writing with disabilities. What is your personal experience about it? Because I think it's incredibly important that we raise this issue. We live in, especially with Twitter and social media, often, especially when you are within the Twitter world of writers, there is a lot of there are a lot of tweets out there where you share with other authors, for example, how many words you write each day and things like that. And to an extent, that can also add the pressure of the performance, and you feel that if you don't write as much, you're not a good author, or you're not an author, or something, and we put ourselves under a lot of pressure. And not just in writing, I think we do that with a lot of things, but I'm talking about writing because, of course, we are within the writing community. And I think we are not kind to ourselves, no matter what, but specifically, there is sometimes people don't realize actually what does that mean if you are writing from a different perspective. And so, I would like, if you mind sharing with us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, well, it's a balancing act. And I think, I generally refer to it as a constant balancing act, living with a disabling illness. I live in the one that affects my writing. I live with a couple of disabling illnesses, but the one that affects my writing most is the chronic migraine. So for those who aren't familiar with that, it's having 15 or more days of migraine a month, of migraine headache. But obviously there's the other symptoms around that, the nausea and the dizziness and the visual auras. So you're spending a large proportion of your time, possibly the majority of your time, dealing with that condition. And that's why I left science. I physically couldn't do that job anymore. And that's why writing is so wonderful to me, because I can fit it around when I'm well, and I can write in bits and pieces when I can look at the screen, and it is something that I have control over. And personally, I'm so grateful I found writing, because when I left academia, it left a massive hole in my sense of identity as well as my life. I'd always been a scientist, and then suddenly I was not, what was I now? So writing gave me something, not just as a mental stimulation and a sense of focus and a sense of direction, but also a sense of identity and belonging. I found an amazing community of writers and people within the publishing industry who were fantastically supportive and encouraging, and amazing friends. So writing has been an absolute gift to me as somebody who's developed disabling illnesses that has hampered a massive other part of my life. But like you were saying, it does come with its own pressures, and you do struggle sometimes to be able to say no to things and to be able to step away. And there are days when I can't write, and I feel guilty for not writing. I sort of think, I haven't hit my 1,000 words today. How am I ever going to get this book finished if I can't sit down and write when I theoretically have the time because my daughter's at school or whatever. So you are constantly having to, or I am constantly having to remind myself, that's okay. That's okay. The book will be there when you're ready. And you do have to protect yourself. If you want to be able to write next week, you need to not write today and just take it easy and pick yourself up again. And that's a learning curve. It's a skill that I think you develop, and it's easier at sometimes than others. Writing is hard mentally as well, in terms of getting rejections and all the rest of it. It's a constant feature of working within the publishing community, is being faced with rejection, which is hard on your mental health. And again, that has a knock-on cost on your illness, on your well-being. So again, that's something that you have to develop a sort of buffer and managing coping techniques with. So it's without the disabling illness, I maybe would never have written, because I would still be working as an academic scientist, and that is a demanding job. So maybe I would never have had the space to actually sit down and go, all these stories I've been telling myself for years, maybe I'll put them on paper. So it's a strange duality, in that I'm incredibly grateful that I have the ability to write now, and that I have found this world and this career and this outlet for my sort of creativity. But also it has stolen a massive part of my life, and it continues to constantly exact this price. So you look at the blessing, and the blessing is that without it, I might never have been where I am here talking to you today. So
thank you so much for sharing this. And that actually leads me to the next point, because the stories you had within you that you just mentioned, just a few months ago, you had a short story published on Strange Horizon, which is an amazing venue for short stories, right? So tell us a little bit about the story, and when did you submit to them? How did it happen?
It's called Bathymetry. It was something that I wrote a couple of years ago as part of a little story challenge with a group of writer friends. We set each other just a sort of friendly challenge. Yeah. And it came out of that. It's about, it's slightly fantastical, slightly speculative, but it's about a young woman in Turkey who has is in her own way trying to resist the regime in Turkey and trying to do her bit, and it covers the Mediterranean migrant crisis and the oppression of LGBTQ community in Turkey and various other issues. But it's basically this one girl trying to find a way to stand up and fight for what she believes in. And I submitted it to Strange Horizons probably about a year ago, actually. And I got a lovely email back saying, we really like this. It needs a revision. And I kind of thought, yeah, okay, that's that out the window then. It was a nice letter, but I revised it, and it wasn't much. They wanted some fairly small edits, but just threaded through the story. And I sent it back in, not really expecting anything. And got a lovely email back from the editor saying, oh, I'd remembered this story and I'd been really hoping you'd send it back, and was delighted to see it again. And yes, we'll accept it. So that going out. And what was lovely also about that being published by Strange Horizons was that they record a podcast as well. So they record it being read, which is the first time I've heard anybody else read my work. So that was just fantastic.
Amazing. So the story is still available there, right? So our viewers can visit the Strange Horizon website and they can find your story there.
Yeah, it was on the March the 8th edition, but I think if you search for my name or search for bathymetry, it'll pop up.
Fabulous. Lorraine, can you tell us what you're working on at the moment? We don't want to give you away too many things, but if you can share with us some of your current projects, that would be nice.
Well, I have a book called Your Sorrows Rise, which is in final drafts and starting to go out into the world, which is a current day book based on a fictitious island in the Indian Ocean. And it's about the conflict between sort of the way that you see yourself and the way that the things that society expects of you. And it's based on the history of St Kilda, the abandonment of St Kilda in Scotland, as well as the issues around climate change that are influencing many low-lying island nations. So, and again, that's an area I worked in. I worked in the Indian Ocean islands quite a bit. So it's the setting is something that is very familiar to me. So that's one novel, and I'm editing a sort of lockdown novel, which was just a very fun, speculative, sort of historical novel, which I'm editing, and it's just fun. It's not quite as serious as my other books. So I don't know whether that'll go anywhere, but it's fun and it's keeping me busy during lockdown. So.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Lorraine, for being with us tonight and for sharing all these amazing things about This Is Our Undoing, and also about yourself. Those are very important things to share, and I think it's very important for the readers and our community to understand that things aren't always that easy. You know, I mean, like you said, publishing is not easy as it is, but it can be made even more difficult sometimes by life circumstances, you know, so it's very important to be able to talk about that. So thank you so much for this. So, and thank you to our viewers for being with us tonight. Now, you are going to be able to see Lorraine doing a fabulous reading at Chimera, Scotland Science Fiction Festival, which is happening in the first weekend of June. And then over the summer, we have the Edinburgh Book Festival, and we're going to have a FantasyCon in Birmingham, hopefully in person, but we'll see what the state of affairs of COVID is. So today, as well as having the premiere of This Is Our Undoing, we have also open pre-orders. So you can find Lorraine's book in both paperback and hardback, ready to be pre-ordered, and there will be some signed copies as well, so you can pre-order the signed copies as well, limited number. But you can find everything on the website, and on the Luna website there will also be a discount for the pre-order price. And if you are a subscriber to the Luna Press newsletter, you will find an extra little voucher. So it's a bargain, absolutely. Do come and shop. and support the small business. But once again, honestly, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Lorraine, for this beautiful book that is now approaching its first steps into the world. We're so excited. So thank you for being with us, Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for giving my book such a lovely home. It's
so
wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you all so very much and have a lovely, lovely night. So it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank you.